fact, not just tunnels, people really have to understand the extent of this, that there are there are entire underground cities, military labs, dumb bases, all sorts of things in the underground. And so I get into details about a lot of the underground, including, like underground that under the Pentagon, you have Emerald City. A lot of these underground cities have a completely different form of governance. Most of them are established with a position titled a queen. So it's going to be a female high level sorceress. Ruling alongside of her, you'll have three wizards. One will be a white, one a black, and one a gray wizard. So you get all these underground areas where the main governance is based off of sorcery, divination, and witchcraft.
Aloha and welcome back to another show, guys. Today I'm so honored to welcome back a special guest, my friend Jessie Czebotar. Jessie is a survivor of satanic ritual abuse and has bravely come forward to share her firsthand experiences with the hidden systems, the spiritual contracts, and powerful structures that many people never even realized existed. Her testimony has sparked deep discussions, and I truly respect her courage in bringing these difficult truths to light. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick disclaimer that some of these topics that we are discussing today may be sensitive or difficult for some listeners. If these kinds of discussions aren't for you, that's completely okay. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Also, please remember that the views expressed by my guest are her own and may not necessarily reflect my personal views or those of the shows. Now, if you've been paying attention, you probably heard whispers about the mysterious fog. This eerie mist appearing in major cities, leaving people questioning, what's really going on? Is this just an unusual weather pattern? Or could there be more to the story? We're also going to discuss the hidden sigils of Orlando and the chilling reality behind the ritual walls. Two topics that Jessie has firsthand knowledge of. Many believe these aren't just random markings, but rather symbols with deeper spiritual and esoteric significance. So, get ready for another fascinating and thought-provoking conversation. Before we begin, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. Your support helps us continue to bring you these conversations to light. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Jessie Czebotar to the show. Aloha again, Jessie, and welcome back to the show. It's always a privilege to have you here. The last time we spoke about, it's called the Voice of God Project, I believe you said.
Yes.
And today, I'd love to focus, I guess I want to talk about that, maybe with what we were speaking of before the show, a little bit about the fog that's going around and possibly maybe connection with that. But I also want to shift a little bit to your affidavits. I mean, I read your affidavits and I know it takes an incredible amount of courage to speak on these topics. And I mean, just reading those it brings me to tears, to be honest. So I deeply respect your bravery and bringing these truths to light. So thank you again so much for doing that. Many of us are not we don't understand the symbols and sigils. And I think you're pretty much the only one that speaks about this. Like you're the person, the go-to for this. So I don't know if you can maybe speak about that.
Yeah, I'm really, all of everything that I'm sharing comes out of my specifics and my training, the different things that I was trained or raised up to do within the system. My job was to oversee the running of the entire system, which included both the Luciferian Brotherhood, which is the governance side of the system, and their sovereign military. And in that, it's such a vast, extensive system. So I kind of want to start with resources for people who are just beginning to look into this. I am currently working on some projects, one of them being in video form, the other being a book, where I'm really breaking down the training, the symbols, the contracts, what do they mean, between the physical and the spiritual worlds? How can we know how this is working and operating in our quadrants or in our regions? So, the first resource I'm going to encourage people to go to is timothycharleshomeseth.com. He's the only war correspondent who's reporting on the Luciferian Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military Order. On there, you can find a few of my affidavits. It's not all inclusive. There's been many of my affidavits that have not been released publicly yet. And you can find my Congress petitions just simply by typing in, affidavits or my name or Congress petitions. So that's a great resource. And, a lot of my stuff before I put it out publicly, it's going to go there first. So that's why I encourage that. Then on my website, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com, you can find one of my newest series, which is called Unveiling the System. And that's going to be a continuing, ongoing series where, piece by piece, I'm breaking down the system. Then on my website, if you go under coachings, which I have available for February, so I'll be switching them off every few months, but every single Thursday evening in February, I'll be doing a coaching course. And it's a progressive course. So it's going to teach you, in the first one, the first coaching, we look at, how do things break down regionally? How do you read their regional sigils like we did on the Hawaii one? The second one is going to focus on more, once you have that information, what do you do with it? How do you use it to begin to develop prayer strategy, anointing strategy? Where do you go with it from there? Then the third one is going to be a deep dive into what I kind of consider their sovereign military, their knights and priestesses, how they work at a regional level. What are their signs and contracts, and how do you begin to recognize their signs and which demonic contracts they're beholden to? Then in the fourth one, we get into how do you begin to read the buildings themselves to know what contracts they've embedded in their churches, in their Masonic lodges, in their governmental buildings. So just by looking at the building, you can tell what brotherhood are there and what they're doing in that place. So I encourage people hop into that. There's limited registration for that. It starts this Thursday, but there's still a few open spots. So, but always be watching for those. So all of those are kind of the backdrop of, as we begin to look at things, you know, how are things working and operating? And, you know, um, I want to kind of give some leeway here because I didn't know if you have specific questions about the affidavits or things you want to talk about, but I'm more than happy to share about some of that.
Yes, please. Yes. Yes. Whatever
Yeah.
you're more comfortable with. I do have some questions, but whatever you're comfortable with, because they were a lot of very deep things that you wrote about. Very deep. So,
Yeah. So in there, I give extensive, the big premises within my affidavits are one to show, the Luciferian Brotherhood system and their sovereign military. I name several places where they're operating. It's not all inclusive, but several of the states that I tend to focus on from my childhood are the Wisconsin area, Illinois, Wyoming, West Virginia, just to name a few. And I talk about different locations in there and how the system was, how they work and operate. Because what you have happening is you have, children that are born into this hierarchy system, or even their expendable children, as the system classifies them, that are born. And, for the hierarchy children, they're going to be selected, they'll be kind of tested by people in their quadrant leaders or above, and they're going to be looking for certain things. part of the quadrant leader's job is to, help ensure that the system continues to run and operate. So there's always going to be, as each person is in their position, as they age, as they, get older, there's always going to be that need to find someone who can fill that spot when they're gone. And they're going to be looking for that individual. They may hand select that individual when they're smaller. It may be as, a child gets older that then they're selected in a fellowship or another program that will give them more specialty studies and skills to hop into that position. So, I talk about how, as children are selected, they're going to go through certain tests. Those tests are going to dictate which position they're chosen for. From that, that's going to dictate, are they put into a training program? Are they put into what they actually technically call a program or programming? So, it's important to understand that training, programs, programming, and projects and experiments are all separate things. A child can be enrolled in more than one of those, depending on how many circle groups they're in and, what areas they need to be trained in. Um, all of that works in connection with, what I call the departments of the system. So the departments are broken down into the Masons, the Mormons, the Jesuit Catholics, the Satanists, and the Kabbalah. And each of them are going to be given a portion of, for their area, for the things that they're given charge of, what programs, what training are they going to specialize in? And we can learn to read what they specialize in. One of the easiest things to read in your region are the crests that are for the diocese. Also, you get certain symbols, mascots, you get colors, you get things that are chosen that for your school systems that, you wouldn't at first look say, oh my gosh, that's connected to the system. But let's just take, for example, one of my schools out of Casper, Wyoming. It's an elementary school. Their symbol was a dragon. Well, within the system, as they kind of break down into that governance, who's paying for the projects, who's paying for the programs and the training, they have a very systematic way of labeling everything under what they call the cherubic or the seraphim signs. Those are four distinct signs, and they all connect to a quadrant area. But all of it's under the Kabbalah or the Kabbalah, who are kind of, they operate, anybody who's Golden Dawn under the Kabbalah are going to be connected to the administration holding the contracts for the system. So that includes the financial contracts. Now, those individuals who are holding those for the quadrant, they can be under the Vatican or the Holy See. Those are part of the financial backers under the old Babylon system for the system. The new system, the Kabbalah, are going to be highly connected to the Sanhedrin under Israel because that's who the Leviathan system fall under with the financial contracts. So, in that, they're going to have their little organized way, and you get different symbols that represent the different quadrants. Now, either they will put those symbols in the names of four apostles. You get John, Luke, Matthew, and Mark. So as you go into like a diocese or a Catholic church, you may see like, those symbols, the faces of John or Luke or Mark or Matthew, or you may see the names. Sometimes, a lot of the Catholic churches are named Saint John, Saint Luke. All of that tells you which which quadrant is paying the bill for, who do they have to return all their assets and finances over to? Um, the other way they might do it is through what they call the seraphic symbols or the cherubic symbols. And those are going to be animals. So for the northern quadrant, you usually have the eagle or a bird or a flying creature. So it could be like a Pegasus or a dragon. So, that school that I went to that had the dragon as its symbol, it was under the northern quadrant. Now, other schools in that same area would use the eagle symbology, also symbolizing that they're under the northern quadrant. Then you have the eastern quadrant, which is going to be more, I consider it more your carnivorous type animals, your lions, your bears, your wolves, your tigers, your panthers. Anything that is more that type of creature is going to be your eastern quadrant. Then you have your southern quadrant, which usually is symbolized by a man, or that could be like a knight, a regular man, a Native American, but it also can be used as an arrowhead. That's a common one for the Southern Quadrant. So you get like your schools down in San Francisco, San Diego, they'll use an S and a D with an arrowhead representing that you know, that sign of the man. Sometimes you'll get primitive tools or maybe sometimes farm tools, uh, you know, but most of the time it's going to be connected to a man or arrowhead. Then for your Western quadrant, you're going to get more your farm type animals or your work animals, which could be, your ox, your camel, your horse, um, a sheep. So that would tell you then, that's going to be your Western quadrant. So it's important to understand that, they begin to file everything um, based on who's footing the bill. And in that, you can look at the crust, you can look at the different symbols that they have on there. All of that tells you, what are the children that are coming to that department going to be trained in? A lot of times you'll see keys on that symbology. A single key is always going to represent your code of silence. That's the first, like it within the brotherhood system, there's two codes that every child is going to be bound to. The first is that code of silence, meaning, they can't tell what's happening. The second, they'll use the code of brotherhood, which means that, you're bound to those that are considered brothers or sisters in your circle groups. So, each circle group is going to be separate. Each circle group, at the same time is collectively going to be coming together 4 times a year. But basically, whatever happens within your distinct circle groups, stay in those circle groups. And if your brother needs something, it's your job by all extent of the means to provide that need. So that could be, lodging, food, clothing. If a member passes away and they have a wife and children, it's that circle group's job to continue to provide to make sure that they're okay. Um, the other part of that, though, is that it's also your duty to cover your brother's sins. And that goes to all extent of the means. Whatever you need to do to cover your brother's sins, you're going to do it. So those are the codes that they're bound under. The second way you'll see keys is you'll see two of them together. When you see two keys together, that represents the hidden knowledge or the Kabbalah knowledge. That they hold the keys of knowledge, and wherever you see those, you're going to also know that place is connected to some sort of secret books in the system that they're going to use to train in magic or secret knowledge. So usually that's going to be some sort of Solomonic book, or, the Book of Knowledge. The Keys of Enoch is another secondary book that a lot of the children are going to go through. Um, they have extensive books that are going to be connected based on, whether their specialty is training in the right hand path, which is light side magic, or the left hand path, which is the dark side magic. Um, so all of those things, I begin to chronicle in my testimony, and talk about. I primarily focus on the training centers that are underneath the Rockford, Illinois area. That was probably my primary training center. I also bring into that connection that, at the end of the day, this Luciferian Brotherhood is Nazi. They're all Nazis, and they helped, institute Nazis coming into our country. They helped hide them. They helped give them a place to be operating, to do their training and programming through. A lot of direct access was given to, a multitude of Nazi scientists. The main one that I talk about is Michael Karkok, who was the Ukrainian Legion of Defense leader for Adolf Hitler. He was my main instructor in learning defense magic. He also was the individual who, came over after World War II. He was very influential in setting up the training programs that we see operating today within the Brotherhood and the sovereign military. His biggest connection and information in all that he had to add was about the spiritual gates, the tunnel systems, getting everything working through the quadrants smoothly. That was part of his job, to set that up. And, defense is not necessarily about protecting people, or we the people in the United States. It really is about, protecting the system and keeping the system going. So that was a big chunk of that. And he had two major people within our U.S. government that, were understudies to him that he trained. One of those was Colonel Michael Aquino, who was the head of our Department of Defense. He oversaw all of the training projects and programs that were considered in the Western quadrants, both internationally as well as within the United States, and primarily, all of the projects and programs that fell under the Department of Defense, which included the Looking Glass projects, the Star Wars Now projects, which also are connected to the Stargate projects, which we've just been hearing about recently with Donald Trump. And then also the Voice of God project. And then his counterpart was John O'Brien, who is the head of our Central Intelligence. So a lot of the children that went through the training and programs through the Department of Defense, then as they got older, were put into, activation within our Central Intelligence and security agencies. So all of that was kind of how things were working and operating, each of them having their own piece that they oversaw. So a lot of that is what I detail, and then, some of the more horrific things, which I won't go in depth on here, but the big thing I point out is that this system commits crimes against children. And those crimes include rape, torture, adrenochrome and organ harvesting, as well as satanic ritual and murder. Then you also have the cannibalism, and a lot of these children, hierarchy children, are subjected to that, whether that's they have to eyewitness, those things occurring to the children that the system considers expendable, or whether, they have to learn to perpetrate those crimes against other children. Either way, they're forced into situations that, in all honesty, in probably the clearest words I could put it, is that this content that in these training programs and um, projects could not even be classified as triple X. I mean, it's stuff that doesn't even fall into that category of triple X. That's how bad it is. So if our children have to go through that, you know, there's a problem if that is the main bulk. Because what I testify to is that, it looks like everything on the surface is normal. It looks like these children are just going to school, and yet you have some of them that literally, they show up, then they're taken for their brotherhood and sovereign military training. A lot of that's done in between the physical and the spiritual world. So there isn't time. And, they're having all of these experiences in their day. They're being returned home in the evening. Some of them, their training still continues through the nighttime. Then they do their nighttime training. And, from the time they're 4.5 until they're 10, they go through these horrific experiences. And then, you know, if they're not needed right away for their position, they're kind of be put into avenues where they just continue to specialize or hone their skills that will benefit them when they finally do step into whatever position the system has for them in adulthood. So that's going to be your secondary training programs, your fellowship programs, your higher level education training, things like that.
Yeah, it was very hard to read. I can tell you that. Like you said, it was you can't even categorize what you experience under triple X because it was that horrific. Um, and I don't even know how you can be so normal, what you experienced and how you can function every day because there's I don't think most people could not. And to be so brave and to come out with this. Is there a time ever, are you afraid that they may come back and retaliate to you or your children, your family, or have they?
Yeah, they have. There was a moment of decision, but in that, it wasn't initially my decision. As a child, I constantly, every chance I got, I was trying to tell. Even, when my mom finally figured out what was happening, we attempted to go to police outside of our area. They basically told us to keep our mouths shut if we wanted to live. And, it didn't matter, as a kid who I tried to tell. I tried to tell pastors, I tried to tell law enforcement, I tried to tell people I knew who were outside of the system. People really did not want to hear. And I think it was they didn't know what to do with the little bit that I was saying. But the sad part was that they didn't even ask questions. You know, they didn't try to seek out further to figure out what was going on. But as I got older, it was just a matter of, mostly years of just living in silence. And then one day in 2016, I kind of knew that the Lord, that things were stirring. And I had at that time like a lot of memories coming back. I was working through a lot of those with the Lord. And one day the Lord said to me, "You will give your testimony in full." And I knew because I'd never given it in full before that. It was like, Lord, you know that if I speak out, like they're going to come for my kids, they're going to come for my family, That's always been the threat. Um, and it was like, Lord, I'm willing, but I need to ask for safety. I'm going to ask for you to be a hedge of protection. I'm going to ask for you to go before me and all of this stuff. And I pretty much was pleading with the Lord on all of that. And when I got done pleading, the Lord was very prompt to respond. And he basically said, no, you shall do it right in front of their faces. And in that moment, I knew that I had to make a choice. Like, I knew that there was no guarantee of protection or safety. Like, I knew that I would just have to be obedient. And in that, I've lost greatly. I've lost several family members, including a son. Um, but in that, God is still faithful. There's been no other time in history where so much information has gone forward. And as I've stepped forward, other survivors have as well. You've got other survivors that had stepped out before me, but you see them stepping out more now. All of us collaborating together, how this system has been working and operating through the generations. So it's powerful to see what the Lord has done. And, in that moment of decision, it was like, man, what if I lose everything? What if I get through this and I've got nothing and I don't get anywhere? And the question it came down to was, what if it's just for one child? What if only one child gets out? Am I willing to do this? And it was like, absolutely, I am. No child should have to live through what I lived through. And so for that is what I fight, that no child should have to live what I have lived.
Absolutely. In your affidavit, you talked about the Galactic Federation. What is that? What is a Galactic Federation?
Yeah, so as you begin to break down the system at the top, you have underneath the Mothers of Darkness, you have the Council, which goes by many names. It can go by the Satanic or the Druidic Council. It also can go by the Galactic Federation, the Global Federation, the Federation Alliance. But what you have with the Galactic Federation is basically the universal governance of the system as a whole. So going back to the council, but they do have, it is split in two parts. So you have the Fed or the Galactic Federation that's connected to the council itself. Then you also have their universal military.
Hey, Ohana, I hope you're loving this conversation as much as I am. I just wanted to pause for a quick moment to ask for your support. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and feel like we've earned it, I'd be so grateful if you could leave us a rating or review. Your honest feedback really helps us grow and reach more people who love exploring these fascinating topics. And if you think this episode would resonate with someone you know, don't forget to share it with them. Mahalo nui loa for being part of our journey. Now, back to the show.
Universal military.
That's interesting. I think you said the Order of Phoenix was headed by Barack Obama and formerly George Soros, which does not surprise me.
Yeah, the council, the position for the position title for the head of the council is called the Phoenix. So the Phoenix of the council originally was George Soros, and then when he retired, it was handed down to Barack Obama.
Oh my. Um, and you talked about that there's these tunnels underneath the churches, a lot of the churches. I know you concentrated a lot of in Wisconsin, you're saying, and things like that. You also talked about the hands, the wall of hands. What is that?
Yeah, so underneath, it's not just under the churches. You have
Mm.
within underneath the United States as well as worldwide, we have these vast tunnel undergrounds. In fact, not just tunnels, people really have to understand the extent of this, that there are there are entire underground cities, um, military labs, dumb bases, all sorts of things in the underground. And so I get into details about a lot of the underground, including, like underground that under the Pentagon, you have Emerald City. Um, a lot of these underground cities have a completely different form of governance. Most of them are established with a position titled a queen, so it's going to be a female high-level sorceress. Ruling alongside of her, you'll have three wizards. One will be a white, one a black, and one a gray wizard. Um, so you get all these underground areas where, the main governance is based off of sorcery, divination, and witchcraft. The same with the underground water cities. These tunnel systems are built usually in 15-mile radiuses. So what they'll do is as they build the underground tunnel systems and their cities and stuff, they use the above ground cities to literally be like a demographic or a map of what is below ground. So you can use the decoding of the above ground cities to figure out what is below ground. Like one of the things is, you may see churches that will have like these three archways at the front of a building. Well, those three archways are called the three crowns. And wherever you see the three crowns, they mark a northern wall underground. It doesn't mean that the wall directionally sits north, but that's how they teach it, is that, that marks a northern wall. And why it's important to identify the northern wall is because all of the altars are laid on the western walls underground. So if you can find your above ground where the northern wall is, then you'll have an idea, where the western wall is and where the altars are underground, and be able to locate those in your city, in your area. So, so I talk about the vast underground system, how the tunnel systems are laid out. Many of the major training centers have other walls within their tunnel systems that are called ritual walls. Those walls contain the handprints in blood of hierarchy children. So, when a child is born into the system, they're selected around age 4.5, 5. One of the first things that they'll be trained for is they'll have to practice, putting their hand up on the wall. And our handprints are actually one of our quantum identifiers. It's connected to our fingerprints, as well as you've got, different things that they believe are, connected to your destinies, but they're unique to you. And our handprints are connected to the works that God has prepared in advance for us to do. They foretell some of the works that God has for us to do. So, um, in that, their concept is that if they take, that handprint, that quantum signature, that they then can control, your quantum right in that. And it becomes a currency where they buy, sell, and trade off of, the things that are connected to your handprint in the spiritual world and the good works that the Lord has for you to do. So the ritual walls are going to be primarily to Moloch and Baal. Because they demand blood sacrifice. It's considered an offering in blood. And they'll have the children, dip their hands into a bowl with blood and then put their handprint up there. But it's a victim's blood. Um, so those, wherever you see all those handprints on the walls, um, those are significant. It represents where ritual walls are. And what I've been finding is that a lot of above ground places will put up all those little handprints. And some of those areas, where you see stuff that will show handprints like that, they're marking that below ground they are connected to a ritual wall. So one of the places I identified was, the Epic headquarters, which is a medical charting facility that sponsors these charting programs that, to document for physicians or different clinicians to document people's health on electronic charting. And that's connected in the Wisconsin area. But the people who founded that actually came out of Ashton, Wisconsin, which is one of the major training centers that I went through. There's nothing there but the Brotherhood Training Center, so these people are Brotherhood and they are connected to, the Brotherhood getting their foot into the medical systems and, documenting, collecting information that would be considered quantum identifiers. And they're putting that charting system all throughout the United States. But in their facility, in their headquarters, they have some unique things. One of those things is this whole wall where, they have little kids' handprints cemented into the wall, that representing that they are connected to the ritual wall down below. So that can be a way that they're identifying those ritual walls.
I think you mentioned something about Shriners even.
Yeah, you'll have the Shriners that will be connected to that. A lot of times when they go out, they'll have boards in the parades, and you'll see like all these little painted handprints on the boards. You get a huge connection with the Shriners being involved, especially in the children's hospitals. But a lot of that, has to deal with the movement and the trafficking of children through the different medical, humanitarian efforts that different brotherhood orders like the Shriners are engaged in.
Yeah, it's funny. You had mentioned something about the Shriners, the children's hand, and you even mentioned Mexico. And it's kind of odd that we just had a crash that involves a a child that was in an accident just very recently in Philadelphia. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah, I did hear of that and stuff. And the intertwining connection between all that is that, within the system, you have three major orders at the top. You've got the Order of the Phoenix, the Order of the Golden Dawn, and then at the very top, they merge as the Order of Melchizedek. But underneath the Order of the Phoenix, you have another suborder called the Order of Quetzalcoatl, or the Order of Q. Now, their main job, they were a suborder working usually through the Shriner circles, and their job was to transport funds, particularly from the hospitals from Mexico through to the United States, under the Shriners.
Wow, that is something. I don't,
Right? It's like,
I don't know what to say with that. It's just odd.
I think it was
It's,
more than funds. I think they're also classified with Q clearance. I think a lot of the military generals that are connected to them use that sign of Q in their Q clearance, and that Q clearance allows them special access and also special transportation means.
I heard of that cue. It's a certain number too, isn't it?
Yeah, the
I,
number 17.
or
Yeah.
yes, yeah, see, that's crazy. That's all tied in. Oh my God. Every time you talk, I have these little light bulbs that go off in my head. Like, wow, I heard you say something like that, or I see something on TV and of something that you talked about, and it just ties right in.
Mhm.
Um, you also mentioned something about the soul ties or soul seals. I think it's all connected with the handprints and
The soul
footprints.
seals and stuff, yeah. And so those go to the quantum currencies, but you get things like, your blood, your DNA, your footprints or soul prints, which are connected to, your authorities on the land. The Lord says, wherever your foot treads, he's going to give you the land. But he also says that the land belongs to the righteous. Whereas in the Brotherhood and the Sovereign Military, you know, as they overtake land, what do they do with it? They use it for evil purposes and, have their contracts with fallen angels. A lot of even their land, like many people don't even know this, but a lot of the land that our military bases sit on is not owned by the US. You have private vectors, private groups, a lot of them being connected to brotherhood groups like the Odd Fellows, the Knights of Pythias, those groups being connected to quadrant leaders in the system who own the land that our military bases are sitting on. And in that, they lease that out. Lease it out to our military and get paid for having them being there. But what does it get them? It gets them special access, where then you have children who are being brought onto the military bases for their training in the brotherhood system. And yet who's funding it? We, the people, fund it. And, why are we trillions and trillions of dollars in debt?
The
You know,
missing money, all this missing money.
and they even get it through the schools. They mark those children present in the schools. And yet they're not present. They pay extra teachers. They have to have one teacher that goes with the students. They have to have another one that stays with those that aren't in the program or the training. So, they know that
Oh,
people are leaving with those kids throughout the day in the different areas. Um, and yet there's a hiding of all of that. Um, so
you think a lot of these children that go to different places, they're marked in school, but they're really not in school.
mhm.
Do they give them some kind of drug or something so they forget maybe? So they don't remember what's going on?
You have a very
Mm.
multifaceted layer of things that happen. Um, it's important to understand that the children that are chosen for this training and programs, they get tortured to remember things. That could be, ways to access entry or exits. They have to learn all of that, the ins and outs to get where they're supposed to be. The first few times you'll be escorted, but then sometimes you're not escorted, but yet you're expected to show up or be there. Um, they get tortured to forget. At the same time, they could have, temporary drugs that are used that, will just kind of make it so that you don't know the exact way how you got from point A to point B. Kind of like a light sedative. They would use like a lot of Dramamine to kind of make you very sleepy and tired. Some of the time, like when I was a kid, when they would use that, they would just tell me that, I always got car sick or I would get motion sickness. And I'd be sitting there sick as a dog puking and they'd be giving me Dramamine. And but then, you're not fully drugged for the rituals. Um, other times they use things like what I call functioning adreno. So they make special mixtures with hormones from the adrenal and the pineal glands that enhance spiritual acuity. And they'll test the kids to see how much you can take, where it heightens your acuity, but doesn't cause you to go into a psychosis. Um, then they have, other mixtures that they make of that with the adreno. Usually they'll add a little bits of formaldehyde in it. And that's what they'll use when they go into the big psychosis, that literally there's just no limit to the evil that they do when they're in the psychosis.
Yeah, there is no limit, that's for sure. Um, I don't know if you had saw or heard when Mike Pence, I know you talked about Karen Pence a lot. Um, Mike Pence, when that January 6th incident happened, when he had to go in that counseling, at the very end there, I think, was it Schumer that he was shaking hands with? He was shaking hands with somebody, and it looked like they slipped him something in his hand when they shook his hand, like, well done, and gave him, I don't know, a coin or something. Is there such a thing like that in this underground society? Elite?
Yeah, to get into certain places, you have to
Mm,
get in through a sign, a symbol, a token.
a
So that
token.
would be,
Mm,
like a coin would be considered a token.
mm.
Some survivors have testified they use things like poker chips. Sometimes
Oh,
it was certain knocks that they would do. In my series on the Mormons on Aquarius Rising Africa, I talk about how, those that are connected to the Mormons and the different more Gnostic groups of the Brotherhood, they'll use what's considered the sign of Elijah, which is just this sign. So like if you're going in, you would just present your sign and you would
dude.
go in, or you could have
Okay.
something on your, like for, rituals or parties or, their big club things, like it could be certain colored jewels or rings that you're wearing. You could flash a ring, you could flash a seal. A seal's going to be, it could be something that's like metal that looks almost like a bookmark with a certain design or something on it. You may have that as a tattoo, which then you would just flash your tattoo showing what you are. Um, they could wear different colored clothing, like you'll see a lot of that in the Jesuit Catholic churches, where they'll have certain lapels overlaid or certain colors of their outfits, all of that displaying which orders, which circle groups they sit in. And so you get lots of different ways that they can display. Politically, we see like a lot of our women will wear the darker purple, and then you'll see the string of pearls around their neck or the pearl earrings, representing that they're part of the upper echelons of the Order of Melchizedek. Um, we also saw like at one point in the White or Nancy Pelosi and all of her people, they all did that kneeling down thing, and they all were wearing those, what they were saying were certain country scarf, but yet the colors in that, they were very specific to an order, and that's the orders of the Sphinx, which are connected to the Order of Mongolia, all of that being connected to the Order of the Polar Star. It's the upper levels of the Order of the Polar Star. Um, so they
Yeah,
were
they
displaying their orders, and it's common for, that posture in sovereign military to bow one knee, and they may have different ways that they do it, but um, we've seen several of that single knee bow, particularly in our House of Representatives and our Congress. And I've pointed that out in several videos, that I think we should be highly concerned that our House and our Congress are highly infiltrated with sovereign military.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It should be a matter of national security, in fact.
Yeah,
A
you're right.
foreign military is in charge of our government. That should be a problem for a lot of people.
It should be. And they displayed it right in out in the open as they usually, I guess they do. But it's people like me that I don't know what they're doing, you know? I
Right.
have no clue. I know now, especially what you just said, it makes sense now, but at the time it didn't make sense. It's all for a
Yeah.
show. I knew it was a show of something. That's incredible.
One
Um,
of the things, let me just share so people
yeah.
know, because there's some other things that they do at times. I had once, we were invited by friends to a church, and they were invited by a relative of theirs. So it wasn't like anybody had direct connections. And seemed like a nice, nice little church. We went, and I did notice at first, I was like, wow, there's a lot of men in this church, but, for a small church, but that's amazing. That's kind of cool. And they did a little Christmas gospel presentation. And actually, I mean, they stuck with the Bible. So that was all good. They read a lot of scripture. But then we got to the end, and the pastor got up and said that they had a young man that was going to be leaving for the military. And he's like, let's all send him off with a prayer. He's like, come on, let's all send him off. And everybody stands up, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm thinking I'm going to stand up. I start proceeding into the middle of the aisle, and I think, like most churches, everybody's going to gather around the young man and are going to lay on hands, or just kind of hold your hands up in prayer behind him and stuff, right? So as I'm getting out in this aisle, all of a sudden notice how synchronized all these men stand up. They go to the middle, they walk up, then they split, like they go to the end, you know, where the altar is. Some go along the rows of the seats, others go along the rows of the altar, right? And as that's happening, the pastor takes the young man, literally takes the Bible and puts it on the back of the thorax here, or the back of the head, and is pushing down. All of a sudden, all these men, they turn, the ones on the, near the altar, put their elbows up, and they all go down on one knee at the same time. There's me standing there, and I'm like, oh, hot diggity dog. I'm in the midst of all these Knights Templars. I was
Oh
like,
no.
oh my. So, if you see the Bible being put on the
Yeah.
back of the head, or where the shoulders connect to the neck, that's the
Uh-huh.
thorax. That's the sign of death. It's a death contract that
Like a
they
like a
put people
cut of
under.
the head. Oh
Well,
no.
no, it's like it's literally a contract they take to the angel of death, to Azrael. They place the Bible on that. So
So
that's
he's
one of the
gonna
contracts that they'll use.
so they're like giving this child to death.
To death, yes, correct. And then, if you see kind of the weird where it looks like they don't have a lapel on, but all of a sudden they're kneeling like they
Mhm.
got a lapel, you've got some Knights Templars of one order or another. But
So the boy obviously, did he know that they were
he
giving him up to
probably
death?
was
Oh my
trained.
God.
Yeah, they were sending him off to the military, but he was a Knights Templar, you
Oh
know.
my.
Yep, they sent him off with their Knights Templar little send off. It's like, I shall not be coming back. Bye. Thank you for
Oh,
the lovely evening, everyone.
oh,
And to
that's a
my children,
shame.
don't eat the cake. Don't eat. I'm leaving.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like would they use those what do you call them? Those cooked cakes things. What do you call them where they put the blood and stuff in there? You think that's what they used?
Oh, they can, or they can do,
Ugh.
sometimes they'll lace with drugs or
Oh my
sedatives,
gosh.
or, yeah.
I think
You
it's
never
really
know what you're
Mhm.
getting in the goods.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think in Hollywood it's a popular practice amongst the elites or the stars where they have what do you call those cakes? I know you know what I'm talking about, where they put blood and semen and things in the cake. What is that?
Are you like the spirit cooking?
Yeah, okay, maybe that's what it's called.
Okay.
In the cake though, but it's in the cake where they
They
eat
will
it.
put stuff in the cakes, yeah, and they
Ew.
even they will curse the ash. They'll incinerate, people they've ritually killed, or children they've killed, and they'll put the ashes into food products. They'll curse them, so they'll mix it in there with different
Oh,
stuff, and
body fluids. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's gross. Um, you
right.
talked to her, yeah.
Everyone needs to know how to bake their own cake, but even
That's
then.
true.
Maybe learn how to make your own flour too. I don't know.
Maybe
Nothing.
you're right. Yeah,
Gotta pray.
exactly. Gotta pray. Um, the Voice of God project. I'm just curious. we kind of talked a little bit about it in the beginning, where this strange fog or mist that's been going around in, I don't know if it's just America or around the world or big cities.
I've heard some outside of the around the world, but
Wow. What is this? Could they be using this Voice of God project?
they could be, and I think it is connected to targeted warfare against, civilians. I talk about different things in my affidavits, like the biochemical warfare, that they'll use pestilence, they'll use famine, they'll use earthquakes, they'll use floods, droughts, all sorts of things to cause, chaos on the people. And then, usually they'll be connected to the dark side. They'll cause the chaos, the doom, the gloom. And then you'll have the night side come in looking like heroes with the solutions, the help, let us triage, we're all prepared. Um, let us help. And, we've got all these programs that are going to help. We've got finances that will help. And, they make it look like they're heroes. And all of that is to keep equilibrium within the system, um, between the evil and the good. But in that, you do get a lot of things with the weather. And I talk about how, there's a connection between the Voice of God project and in connection to CERN, DARPA, HARP, um, and all of those different programs are invested in different forms of what we would classify as basically sorcery, divination, witchcraft, um, energy, nuclear energy weaponry against us, um, or biochemical weaponry. So do I believe that, this fog is something that the system is doing to cause harm? I do. Because you hear a lot of areas where it's striking. All of a sudden now there's stuff happening to people, upper respiratory, whether that's sinuses, ears, eyes, your lungs, all of that's getting attacked. How do we overcome that? We really need to be people of prayer. We need to stand firm in the Lord's word that no weapon formed against us shall prosper. At times, we don't classify things as weapons that the enemy's using against us. And we need to not be afraid to say, you know what, Lord, I come against this weapon that the enemy is forming against me. I refuse it. I reject it. I command it to go and be moved out of the way. You're not going to affect my area. You're not going to affect my region. Lord, would you help move it out of the area, clean it up? A lot of it, like I said, is connected to the different organizations, with behind it, you have the system.
In Orlando, where I'm currently at right now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the sigil here. It's a very different sigil. It kind of looks like palm trees. Like
Mhm.
there's five palm trees and there's five lamp posts and like a little road. It's kind of really simple. Does that mean anything? I'm sure it does. I
Does.
should say, what
Yeah,
does
it
it?
does. Let me quick look up.
Okay.
Let me see if I can quick pull it up here real fast. Yeah, so on that, you do get a lot. No, no, that did not.
Found
They
it on
put up
Wikipedia.
city sigil.
Ah.
It pulled up all these tattoos. So when you see that winding road, that
Mm.
you can look at a lot of the Golden Dawn books.
Oh,
That winding road is specific and it represents Kabbalah and the Golden Dawn. It also is another way that they'll show um, one of two different uh, things that they're communicating. The first is when it looks a little bit more like an S, that's representing the seed of Cain. That also represents the first spell that you're going to find in um like a picture of it, not the actual spell itself, but you'll find in the Initiates of the Flame book, which is Replicado, which means multiply thyself, for the seed of Satan. But you see that winding road, but then you see it go into a Y, which the upside down Y for them, represents that seed of Satan, but particularly in connection with um, the men, or sometimes at the higher levels, you're going to get different training areas for Grand High Priest, and that's going to represent the upside down cross. Um, in some of their trainings for unholy things. In that, there's just the one big palm tree that's at the forefront,
Mhm.
representing that single line contract, which is going to be, the contract between Abaddon, Ashtaroth, and Leviathan. And then in the background, you see a cloud. Um, that going back to the book of Exodus, where the Lord appears to Israel during the day, his presence appearing as a cloud, a pillar of cloud. So, really, it represents a pillar. And when you have the tree there too, it can represent the two pillars, the ball and the Ashtaroth poles. But it gets into further stuff deeper in the system, but a lot of it connected to the different type of trainings. And then from that sigil, we also see that there is underground military bases within the city connected to that.
Unreal. That's why we need to look at your the classes that you're teaching
The
Thursdays.
coachings are
The
probably where you're going to
coaching.
get the most
Yes.
with that, or the unveiling of the system, but I don't have that many in that series yet. But in the coaching, we really do in-depth dive into the sigils and how to read those. And again, that's coming up, every Thursday evening here in February. So register, because then it will be a couple months before I hold the coaching courses again.
Okay. And where can people find you in that course, the coaching that you're
You can
teaching?
find that on kingdomlivingwithjessie.com and look
Okay.
for the coachings. Um, and you click on there, they're there for you to register.
Yeah, and it's so important. And you give a specific time that you do this or
It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, usually 7 to 10 p.m. is
wow.
where we go. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, that's wonderful. Okay. So I think that's really important that people do look into that because that's the only way you're going to know. No one else teach this. So that's the only
No,
way they're going to find
nobody
us.
else
Nobody else.
teaches it.
So
This is all
exactly.
upper level stuff, and nobody else teaches it. So,
It's incredible. Yeah. So I encourage everyone to do that. Well, Jesse, I truly appreciate you taking the time again to be here and to share your knowledge, your experience with us, your insights into these complex topic. It's invaluable. It really is. And I know our listeners gain so much from your perspective. And I thank you again for your courage, your honesty, and the willing to dive deep into these conversations. And I look forward to having you again. And I just
yeah.
want to tell people that everything that we talk about here is not, we don't talk about what we're going to talk about ahead of time.
No.
You
Yeah.
say this from your heart, from your mind, everything comes out. And these questions that I ask you is nothing I give you ahead of time. And
Yeah.
you
Just
know these
basic
answers.
conversations.
Yep,
I want to
exactly.
share one more thing. I just
Yes.
had my newest book also is now at the publisher.
Oh,
I
yay.
don't only the large print. So if you want to wait another week, I am almost with the 6x9, the regular one, almost done,
Okay.
but having some formatting issues still.
Oh,
But the large print, the ebook for that are available on Amazon.com, and it's called Faithful in All His House. So you can also, that goes along with my Faithful in All His House series that you can find on the Kingdom Living with Jesse, where, I really want to equip people, give you tools, resources that will help you develop your faith, but also know what your authority is in Christ and know how to walk in that authority in your life. So I encourage you all to look into that.
Yay. Yes, absolutely. I didn't know you had a book coming out. Thank you, Jessie. I know. You're so modest. You don't ever say anything. And that brings us to another end of a powerful episode. I want to extend a huge thank you to Jessie Czebotar for once again sharing her deep knowledge and insights with us. These are complex and heavy topics, but shedding light on them is essential for understanding the bigger picture. If you found this episode valuable, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. Your support helps keep these conversations alive. And if you want to dive deeper into these topics that don't always make it into the mainstream, check out my website and Patreon for exclusive content. Until the next time, guys, stay aware, stay curious, and keep questioning the world around you. Mahalo for tuning in, and I will catch you on the next episode. Bye.
It's a brand new day. Hey. Wake up every morning and say, it's a brand new day. Hey. Take a good day, make it great, okay? Cause if you got some lemons, make some lemonade. Yeah, chase those clouds away. It's a brand new day. Hey. It's a brand new day. It's a brand new day. Okay, okay. My whole life got them hand-me-downs, but what that meant was I had my family round. And sometimes I can't help but frown. Then I remember what I meant for. It's so simple, I just say, gotta just celebrate. It's gonna be A-okay. Life's too short to waste away. One step at a time's all it takes, okay. It's a brand new day. Hey. Wake up every morning and say, it's a brand new day. Hey. Take a good day, make it great, okay? Cause if you got some lemons, make some lemonade. Yeah, chase those clouds away. It's a brand new day. Hey, it's a brand new day. It's a brand new day. I'm acting brand new. You can tell that bad news. It can go in van moves. I'ma be like, achoo. I'm allergic to a bad mood. Hey, okay, let me ask you. If you got a smile on your face, raise your hands up. Hey. That's the mantra. So get up off your feet, go ahead, stand up. Okay, what's the plan, huh? Woke up every day like this. It's a brand new day.